Okay, let's buckle up. We are riding in the WIP parade of accountability today. Yes, let's just do it. So this is my third episode. I'm Caitlin. I'm a maker outside the Boston metro area, and it's 2026. I gotta clear off the needles. I gotta get rid of some of these WIPs. My last video, I talked about my 2026 making goals, which included a 5x5 knitting bingo grid, which is up on the screen now, I presume. And in addition to mapping out my Make 9, which was a big part of my video last time, I included a lot of other squares of stuff I wanted to check off for this year. 5 of which were carryover WIPs from last year, from 2025. And yeah, I gotta check those bingo boxes. I got to, get these garments worn. As a little preview, the ones highlighted in yellow are what we're talking about today. So luckily, I can start off by saying, here's one of them right here. So this is actually my first finished garment of 2026 and my first bingo check of the year. This is the Tessellated vest by Andrea Mowry. And I'm starting off without my iPad. 1 second. Okay, I'm gonna actually try to do a little post-production for this video in the sense of cutting out superfluous footage. So we'll see, this will be good practice since I definitely shouldn't leave you alone on the screen. Anyways, so where was I? I was talking about the Tessellated vest by Andrea Mowry. This project was something I wanted to make since it came out. In all of the videos that I saw on YouTube about this stitch pattern, everyone seemed to be very happy with the final product, and nearly, if not all, did talk about how tedious it is to knit. It is a bottom up, knit in the round, and then you split front to back to knit flat, doing some armhole shaping, some neck shaping, and then up at the center here, I did a 3 needle bind off. I don't know if she called for kitchen or stitch or not, but you connect the front and the back, and then you pick up to do the ribbing. Done, right? Sounds easy. And for the most part it's a slipped stitch pattern, so it's color work, but it's not stranded or anything. It's just one yarn at a time. And I genuinely and generally love, is it just called slipping stitches? Is there a fancier name for it? Mosaic. I don't know, according to her tag words on her Ravelry page, she uses the word mosaic knitting. I think that's right. It kind of rings a bell. Yeah, I like it. I find it rhythmic. I find it fun. And for the most part, I did enjoy knitting this up until the split for front and back. And mainly my gripes come in simply in terms of the number of yarns you're using that you have to manage once you're knitting in the flat. Still love it. Still have to figure out how to wear it. I haven't worn it out in public yet. I hope I'm not blinding you with my tessellated square pattern along with my plaid shirt, but you know, I kind of like a little matchy clashy when it comes to patterns. I think the colors work well. I have some plain denim shirts, chambray, that I think would look good under this. I definitely will use it as a layering piece. I think I can wear it to work. I work at a school. I love it. It might be a little difficult to style because of the colors I chose, but yeah, I think I like it. I have to kind of give it a test drive. I'm going to wear it tonight when I go out. But anyways, so I guess I'll tell you about the yarns. Because that's kind of where my gripe comes in with the yarn management. The background color that I did the ribbing in is Vovo by Rosa Pomar. The pattern is made for sport weight, and so that's what I used. This is a really pretty yarn and I really, really like it. I would say that it's blue, but I think it's dyed on a dark base. So there's a marling where it almost is like a blue-black. I don't know if you can see that. This is colorway 03. And I bought 5 skeins of these and I definitely did not need 5 skeins. I originally bought 4, and then after, you know, the ribbing at the bottom is, I think I did under 2 inches or about 2 inches. And then I knit a little bit into the body and I was already running out of 1 ball and I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna make it with just 4 balls. I panic bought another one and in the end I used 2.5. So it really doesn't use that much yarn even for the main color. The bright green, which is very blinding, but I think kind of fun. I used Lamb and Kid, their birdie base. I guess technically their yarn is called Diamond Lane, their yarn brand. And this is the color is called Jolly. It's very, very vibrant, and I will say when I did block this, the water turned this color. I wasn't really worried about it bleeding into the other yarns, and it didn't at all. But being hand-dyed and being so vibrant, the water was ecto cooler green for sure. And then the other color, you know, the third color, the pattern calls for 3 colors, but I ended up holding 2 strands together because at first I started off just using this when I made my swatch. This, I cannot tell you the name of the color, but as you can see, it's color changing and it's a Madeleine Tosh light, like Mad Tosh light. So it's a single ply variegated yarn and it's a light fingering. I want to say it has close to 500 yards and 100 grams. So, you know, while the Vovo I would say is a true sport weight, and it's a woolly wool, it's 100% wool, it's non-superwash, and it has 156 yards per 50 grams, so 312 yards per 100 grams. I consider that a true sport weight. This was a little too thin to hold on its own for what I was looking for. So I met gauge, but the fabric felt a little thin. So then what I did was that I held this double with this. And this is a lace weight yarn from Pearl Soho. It's called Spindle is the name of the yarn, and it's a Donegal Irish tweed yarn. It might have a little bit of silk and cashmere. It's not 100% wool, but it's 95 or not, 90+% wool, and then a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Don't remember the name of this off the top of my head, but they're blue, and it's very tweedy, and it's thin. So we're talking 660 yards per 100 grams. So together it gave me the weight and the warmth that I was looking for. So this vest is comprised of these 4 yarns. And it wasn't that bad knitting in the round, but knitting flat, whole other experience. And not only knitting flat, but then when you're decreasing, it's just hard, or for me impossible to carry up the yarns in a clean way. So I had to cut the yarns a lot. There was a lot of tangling. In the end, what made it more bearable is that I started using bobbins. So that way I didn't have 4 huge balls of yarn to manage. I just had I had 4 bobbins to manage, and that made it worth it. I was able to kind of power through at the end. The last hurdle I had to jump with this pattern is that she just gives you a total number of stitches to pick up for the finishings on the arms and the neck. And I would much prefer a ratio. I mean, when you give me a number like 150, I mean, I don't want to have to count around and see how many stitches I have that are possible to pick up, and then it's just not ideal. So in the end, I didn't aim for that. What I ended up doing was just folding the neckline and the arms into 4 equal parts, and then actually 8 equal parts. I put stitch markers around, and then I tried to pick up a similar number of stitches in each. And then I ended up kind of close to the number she was asking, a little bit over, but it worked out. So overall, I'm happy. I blocked the body before I picked up for the arms, for the ribbings, but I haven't blocked it since finishing, and I think it would relax a little bit more, come out a little bit more in the shoulders, and maybe get a little bit looser in the armpits. I do feel like it's a little bit up in my armpit, and that's despite having knit a little bit more length here. That was another modification I made, because I read that some people's project pages, they talked about how I think she's very short torsoed. I see that in a lot of people's notes, that she tends to make things very cropped, and so I'm very long torsoed. So I lengthened this a bit, and it still is a little bit up in my armpits. And then I also knit the body much longer. I think I just measured it. It's 13 inches actually from the underarm to the bottom of the hem. But guys, I did it. So first box on my knitting bingo checked, 1 WIP down, 4 to go. So I'm going to talk about those 4 now. I do have them in a little bit of an order of me trying to finish them, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I just got to get these done. So the first one that I really want to finish, well, I guess the first 2 are kind of tied. One of them I would prefer to get off the needles because I checked my Ravelry project page, and I've had this sweater on the needles since March 24, 2024. So I'm coming up on 2 years, and there's really no reason for it. I don't know why it's taking me so long. When I first checked my Ravelry this morning and I was looking at this project page, I thought that it was only on the needles for almost a year, and I'm like, oh, that's not bad. And then I realized it was coming up on 2 years, and that's bad. It's bad simply because it's not difficult, and I've spent so much money on this yarn, and I really want to wear it. So let me show, don't tell. I'm talking about the Anemone, sorry, I do know how to say that. The Anemone sweater by Pernilla Larson of Knitting for Olive fame. And yeah, I mean, I've put the stats up on the screen by now, but this pattern, I love kind of a folk floral vibe. I hate to use that word, but you know, I like the essence of folk art a lot, especially from Eastern Europe. I have a penchant for it. But I like that this sweater has kind of a folksy, maybe a little bit kitschy style pattern to it. The way that she designed the pattern, it's to be knit in fingering weight yarn. So they're knitting for olive merino held with their soft silk mohair for a gauge of 23 stitches and 28 rows. And I think part of the complication for me is that, you know, why do anything simple? Why follow what the designer suggests doing when you can make it so much more complicated? And, you know, the saga of this, I guess, comes from the fact that I bought some yarn from the Lamb and Kid again, and it was their, well, let me just show you first. I mean, I don't want to you know, I want to make my fans happy. So this is it so far. This is the front. I'll talk a little bit more about it, obviously, but I just want to show you what I'm talking about. So this is her so far. And this is all over stranded color work, as you could tell. Well, maybe you can or cannot tell. Make sure I don't lose stitches. It's knit from the bottom up, and then the pattern gives you the options to either put in steek stitches so you can continue knitting in the round, or it suggests splitting front to back and knitting the color work flat. And I mean, I was gonna say don't ask me why, but I can tell you why. I could tell you why I chose the latter suggestion. You know, this is me having split for color work and I'm knitting it flat. It's the first time I've ever done this. It's actually, honestly, really not that bad. It's definitely a lot slower. When I knit stranded color work in the round, I'm a continental knitter by nature, so I always hold my working yarn in my left hand, but when I knit color work, I hold the dominant color in my left hand and then I throw with my right. I don't know how people purl English style with their right hands. It's such a foreign, unfamiliar, awkward experience for me. I can't do it. So what I've been doing with the knitting of the color work flat is just keeping the dominant yarn underneath, you know, closest to the sweater, and then just dropping one yarn, picking up the other. And that works for me. It's really not that big of a deal. I'm even doing, there's one row in this pattern where you actually have color work, 3 color work. And lucky for me is that that row is on a purl row. So I actually I've been purling 3-stranded color work to make this. So that's one thing that's kind of slowed me down a lot, is the hump of knitting color work flat, even though it's really not that big of a deal. But the main thing that I'm contending with, and maybe you've noticed because you're like, geez, Caitlin, this sweater looks huge. You would be correct. I am going for a very oversized, cozy, slouchy fit, which is hard for me to do. I'm not very good at knitting things oversized even when I try, but I'm going to succeed as much as I can. But you might also notice that the pattern itself looks larger, and that's true, and that's because, circling back to what I started talking about, is my yarn choice. So instead of knitting this in a fingering and mohair held together as the designer suggests, I'm making this out of a worsted weight yarn. Love the yarn. Wasn't necessarily the plan I had for the yarn when I bought it, but I have spent so much money on this yarn. I've tried all these different things with it, and none of it was working out, so I just decided to make this work. And the yarn I'm talking about is Todd Worsted by the Lamb Kid. And this is 65% yak, 35% cashmere, 228 yards per 100 grams. This is the color, the main color that I'm using is called Old Shale. And there's no price tag on this. Maybe that's better. It's better that way for sure. I mean, if I were to do the math on how much money I've spent on yarn for this sweater, granted I won't use it all, but this is hands down the most expensive garment I will have ever knit. Hands down. Don't tell me how much I'm spending, but it's probably over $300. Let's not go there. Not all at once, you know. It's these things where I first started off getting some yarn off someone's D-stash, and I was excited about that. It was actually Stacy Elstone from what was her yarn? She doesn't dye anymore. Stress Knits. She was de-stashing some of this yarn, and I got it from her. Oh, look at them matching. And it was these 2 yarns. Actually, the Jolly Green was also part of that de-stash because it was a bundle to make some sort of scarf or cowl or something. So I was like, oh, it's cheaper than retail, and I'll get to try some yarn that everybody was raving about at the time. And I was like, it's a good deal. And then of course it wasn't a good deal, because in the end I've accumulated yarn trying to think of things to do, and then whatever, I've snowballed, and now I have a bag of hundreds and hundreds of dollars worth of this Todd Worsted yak. Beautiful yarn for sure. This Old Shale, maybe I should turn the light on. Hold on. Oh God. I hope I didn't scare you. Maybe I won't. Okay, anyway. It's a little gray out, that's why I wonder. But anyway. This Old Shale color is, I would call it, I don't know, it's a little bit cool toned. I definitely see a lot of gray in it, but it's a gray beige, but it's not really quite grayish. Okay, I won't harp on that too much because that's me being ridiculous. This color is Beetle. And this is back when I think they used to mill dye a lot of their yarns. I think they only hand dye now, or the majority of their yarns are hand dyed. So these colors, I don't think, you can get the neutral colors, but I don't think you can get the colors I'm showing you now. But this color is Beetle. And then the other ones, well, this one actually was Dean, I think. Now I'm going to start making stuff up, but Dean. Then I have, and then I don't know the names anymore. I have this light blue. This kind of mustardy color, and then this nice tomatoey red. So this is my little color palette here. I love the colors together. Obviously, the yarn feels amazing, but I've had to do a lot of math to compensate for my gauge. And I'm not done, obviously, with all this math. So like I said, her gauge, the pattern's gauge, is 23 stitches by 28 rows. Whereas mine, oh, whatever. I could have told you the colors, but anyways, whatever. Okay. My gauge is 19 to 20 stitches by 23 rows in 4 inches. So significantly different, 23 stitches versus 19 or 20. And then my row gauge is really crazy. My row gauge in color work is always, I don't know, my stitches are very long in color work, and I think it's because I try to keep my stitches loose so the floats don't get tight. But yeah, so my stitch gauge is 3 stitches smaller. I have 20 stitches versus 23 stitches, and then for width, and then for rows I have 23 stitches, and you're supposed to have 28. So I've had to do a lot of math figuring out what I need to knit in order to get a sweater that fits me. I'm aiming for a size medium, but I'm using the stitch count for their smallest size, which is the extra small. And even then I have to kind of figure out the row gauge a little bit, and I think I overshot. Part of the problem is that I wanted to keep in mind when I bound off for the neck, I didn't want to cut off a flower. And I also didn't want to cut off a flower up at the shoulders. But if I put this at the top of my shoulders, I know it doesn't have a neck on yet. This looks really crazy. I mean, this looks so huge. I want to make a big cowl anyway, but I think that this, I don't know. I think it's too much. I think what I'm going to have to do is tink back to the top of the blue and then just knit in the old shale if I need to knit a little bit more, if the one repeat is too much. But I have to kind of figure that out. I have the stitches, I've started knitting flat on the back, so I've gotten that going. And I think I'm done with all the decreases for the armholes in the back. So I just gotta do it. Once I connect the front and the back and I figure out the accurate length for that, the sleeves won't be bad. It's all over color work, but it's in the round. It'll be in the round. And yeah, I mean, my gauge is big, so it does go by quickly. I just need to get it done. And I want to wear it for spring. I think that color-wise and motif-wise, it's a good spring sweater. So that's why I want to get it done. It's going to hit the 2-year mark, but I think I can wear it for spring. I think I can do it, guys. Okay. The other WIP that I ideally would get done this first part of the year is my version of Midori Hirose's Tulip Guernsey. And if you remember from my previous video, my knitting goals for 2026, I talked about how I wanted to make the waffle loop skirt, and that's because I want a matching set. The skirt is going to be for the end of the year, and I want to finish the sweater, which I started last year, sometime in the first half of the year, just to kind of break up knitting with the yarn and knitting the pattern. It's a little monotonous. But yeah, this was a picture. I'll put up a picture of the waffle loop sweater and skirt. It's in brown, which is what I'm doing. And I could have just knit the waffle loop sweater, and actually that sweater was on my queue for the longest time. But I don't know, the more I looked at it, you know, I was struck by it instantly and I loved it instantly. But the more I've looked at it, something that's bothered me about it is that the cabling portion just seems to start out of nowhere. And I don't know, it's just a stylistic choice that I realize I don't quite like as much as I thought I did. Maybe it's getting a little nitpicky. But yeah, so I decided I didn't want to knit the waffle loop sweater. And instead what I decided to do is do the Tulip Guernsey by Midori Hirose. And slightly adapted, I'll say. I've pretty much used the pattern as designed and as written. I'm making a size medium. My gauge is the same as hers, I believe, which is 16 stitches by 22 rows in the stockinette stitch. Actually, I don't even know what my gauge is because I haven't knit stockinette in a long time. I made swatches a long time ago, so I guess I don't know my gauge, but the suggested gauge is supposed to be a worsted weight yarn where you're getting 16 stitches by 22 rows in stockinette. To me, that's like an Aran weight. But I'm a very tight knitter. Maybe for some people that's worsted, but for me that's Aran weight, and I'm using an Aran weight yarn. You'll remember this yarn. I'm going to use obviously the same yarn for the skirt, but this is Briggs & Little Tuffy 2-ply, and it's 80% wool, 20% nylon. Again, I decided to use this yarn because I wanted there to be nylon in it so that I could sit in the skirt. I think that that's a smart choice. It's a bit of a sacrifice because I don't love the yarn. It feels a little bit ropey. I blocked part of the sweater and it did soften a little bit, but between the texture and the yarn, it's no Todd worsted. It's no yak cashmere blend, that's for sure. But all right, this is what I have so far. Let me make sure I'm showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So this is what I have so far. As you can see, it is pretty much the pattern, except for the fact that I'm not knitting the stockinette. What I'm doing in place of the stockinette is the same pattern as the waffle loop skirt. So I'm hoping that that's going to give it the continuity to really kind of make it look like a matching set. This pattern here is basically just double this pattern here. So there is a lot of similarity between the two. I think I have to turn the light on even though I can't judge if it's making it better or worse, but I'm going to assume better, even if maybe I look worse. Hopefully the knits look better. So yeah, it's a lot. I realize now that I have The stockinette kind of, I don't know, gave you a break, but there's no break here. This is a lot going on. A lot of texture, a lot of pattern. The way you knit this pattern, you cast on the back and you do shaping, you're doing these cables here, very hard on the hands for me. It's a pretty, I don't know, I want to say it's like over 5 or over 6 stitch cable. And with the yarn, I found it pretty slow going because I found it, to be honest, painful. But very, very easy to do. It's not technically difficult. You knit the whole back pretty much, and then you knit the front. It's actually 2 separate pieces. You do something similar for the front, and then you seam them together. So with the needle and thread, connecting them. One of them, I'm not sure which one I'm showing, but one of them I tried to line up the stitches. Yeah, this one I tried. I didn't do it for the other one. It didn't turn out well to make it all match, but this one I tried to make sure that the lines from the pattern matched as much as possible. And then I connected the front and the back, and then I knit the turtleneck. So we'll see. This is, I think, 3 balls of yarn so far. It's kind of close to my belly button. I blocked the back piece, but I haven't blocked the front or since connecting it. So I think what I'm going to do, well, I broke into a 3rd ball of yarn, 3rd or 4th. I knit the turtleneck, and what I'm going to do is knit a sleeve, knit the rest of the ball of one sleeve, and then I'll give it a mid-project block and see what I have left to do. But I think it will go by pretty fast. It's not that, it's easy, this stitch at the bottom, but it's not necessarily enjoyable, but it is really good TV knitting. So I think, you know, I should be able to get this done. That's my goal. Okay. That's my second WIP. The last 2 WIPs are ones that less pressure in terms of wanting to get them done this winter or spring where I could maybe wear them. I would be okay with these ones getting done in the fall, and mainly that's just because I have to figure stuff out. So this one on the bingo card is my self-drafted Fair Isle. After my failed attempt at the academic vest, which turned out too small, you know, I'm still craving that Fair Isle sweater. So that's what I'm going for. I'm gonna make it happen, and I'm making it happen. This is what I have so far. This is also, because I'm figuring it out as I go, this is all self-designed. So the motifs I've all designed, and all I knew is that my academic I had cast on 180 stitches in Brooklyn Tweed Loft using a 3.5 needle, and I loved the fabric of it, but it was so tiny. So I'm doing the same thing, well, almost. I'm using same needle size, 3.5 millimeters, Brooklyn Tweed Loft, but I cast on, I think, like 236 stitches. And I'm just, you know, I knit a tube up. So I was able to kind of give myself the time to figure out how and what to do with the armhole shaping. If you've noticed a pattern, other than my Tulip Guernsey, everything I've knit recently has been bottom up. So it's nice in the sense that at least I'm a little bit familiar with how things should go. This one though, I'm not going to knit flat. I've done steeks. And So I'm gonna give it the good old steek treatment, which is what I did for the academic vest, and that really was not bad. Most of these ends I will just be able to cut off, but I'll just show you my floats and just look. Now I love the effect of all the Fair Isle, but it's a lot. It's a lot of color change going on. Thankfully, this yarn is super grippy. So I've kind of wove in most of them as I went along. So I'm not too worried about really spending a lot of time weaving them in more. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to contend with. I love this so far. I would say I still have quite a few inches, you know, this is my underarm here. I want it to be, what I know I want is for it to be a high, even. Okay, my apologies, I got cut off. Let's try to continue on. I ended up talking the whole rest of everything I wanted to discuss, so it'll be a much shorter version this time, I'm sure. Anyways, so I know I want this to be a high crew neck, and I'm gonna make a turtleneck, and then I'm going to knit the sleeves in a plain color. The color I'll do is this, what I call my main color, or the background color, which is Wood Smoke. I'm not sure if I mentioned where I mentioned, because I know I did at some point, the yarns I'm using. So I'm using Brooklyn Tweed Loft, and there are, let me stop moving it around so much. There are 7 colors in here. So my main background color, as I said, is Wood Smoke. And then I have in these thin lines here a color called Nest. Do I have? So here are the 2 neutrals that I'm using. These 2 guys. And then I'm using a gradient of 3 blues. So I have Old World, which has a lot of purples and reds in it. It's my darkest blue. And then I have my mid-tone blue, which is Flannel. And then my lightest blue is either Ice or Iceberg. I'm not sure where it will look true to color, but these 3 blend nicely, make a nice gradient. I realized something that I like about Fair Isle patterns when I get into the nitty-gritty, when I was trying to figure out what it is I like about Fair Isle motifs and what it is that I don't. I realize I like when there's a sort of fading in and out of a color gradient, which you can see. I don't know how much you'll be able to see, but for this motif here, for example, I use all 3 of the blues, and it's a 7-row motif, and the bottom 2 rows are the darkest blue, and then there's a row of the flannel, the mid blue, and then a row of the light blue, and then it mirrors back out to the mid and dark blue again. And I really like that in motifs. I think it adds a nice dimensionality, is that a word, to it, a little kind of watercolor, I don't know, a little moment that I like. And then I have two poppy bright colors, which are not Loft, but they are Brooklyn Tweed. And to be honest, if I didn't know that they weren't Loft, I would never have assumed. This is their tone line. I feel like it's the same meterage, same yarn. I just know that what distinguishes it is that they take a dye color and then they dye it on a white yarn and then a darker based yarn, and that kind of gives it the light and dark of the same color. So those 7 colors are doing this. And yeah, what I'm hoping to do is I'll put it on pause, but I want to knit. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. I don't know if I said this already, but I want to finish knitting the whole body. I'll have to do some steek stitches for the neck as well, and then I'll have this little cocoon of color work, and then I'll put it away for the fall. This might be something that I pick up. My birthday's the beginning of September. It could be nice to have for my birthday, so maybe I'll pick it up in August. We'll see. Birthday's the beginning of, well, I can't wear it on my birthday anyway. I won't be here. But whatever. My birthday month sweater. That might be a nice goal. And then, because I'm paranoid that I'm going to run out of storage, I'm going to go through this last one really quickly. You missed all of the authentic drama that went along with it. It might, yeah. But the reason why there's a lot of drama involved is that I simply just do not know how I'm going to finish this. I want to say it's not so much the if, because I do really want the sweater and I've put in so much work into it already. I want to make it happen, but I have to figure it out because another bottom-up colorwork sweater, and then the added complication this time is that it's in the round. That's not the added complication. The added complication is that it's a yoke sweater. So you may or may not recognize this relatively iconic motif. This is the, say it with me if you know it, Marie Wallen's Catbells. It's the cover photo of her Cumbria book, and I didn't necessarily like it the first time I saw it. I don't really know what it was. I know part of it was the colors that she used. She uses her own yarn, which is her British Breeds. And I find the color palette to be a little too pinky and springy. The gauge that she gets with her yarn for the pattern is 28 stitches by 29 rows, and that's in patterned stocking stitch, which I realized in my last clip I did that probably means color work. In my head, I kind of just skipped over the patterned part and thought it was 28 stitches by 29 rows in stocking stitch. But I have a gauge issue anyway. So that's part of the complication, is that I have to somehow compensate, I think, for knitting off gauge. Because I don't like as much her color palette for her yarns, I ended up going with a different yarn, which is BC Bio Shetland, and this yarn has much more meterage than her yarn. Her yarn, I think, her yarn, it's a fingering weight, but it says her yarn has 170 meters per 50 grams. And this guy here has 280 meters by 50 grams. So there's just so much more yarn here. I mean, in some ways I am getting gauge. I am knitting, I cast on the ribbing at the bottom on 2.25 millimeter needles, And then I started knitting the body on 2.75 millimeter needles. And that actually gives me a beautiful fabric, but a little bit too small of a gauge. So I am getting the 28 stitches on 3 millimeter needles for a stitch gauge, but my row gauge is off so much. My row gauge in stocking stitch is 40 and 4 inches, whereas her pattern says asking for 29. So that's radically different. But again, I just realized now that that's talking about the patterned stocking stitch. So my row gauge and color work is very different. So I need to go back and measure this and see what's going on here. Maybe I'll be okay. Maybe I won't need to do that many alterations or adaptations of the pattern. But as you see, compared to hers, I've already started, because it's bottom up. I knit her first motif and then I realized it wasn't the length that I wanted. So I just created a color work motif, which in the end I like, but I don't love this little band here. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to tink back and redesign that. Another thing I'm considering is whether or not I should just convert this to a top down and then split for the sleeves and body, and then Kitchener stitch this on. I have this. I have one sleeve done, and I'm up to the color work motif on the second sleeve. So I've done a significant amount of this knitting already. And I would hate to rip it out and just knit the whole thing top down, but I don't know if it's possible. I've Kitchener stitched ends of shawls, but I've never Kitchener stitched hundreds and hundreds of tiny stitches like this. Like, is that a terrible idea? Can someone please tell me? Or should I just power through and continue bottom up and just figure it out and either add more plain rows in between the motifs or come up with new motifs if I need to extend it? I don't know. But this is the most complicated one that I have going, so it's at the bottom of the list. I do really like it. I do really love the fabric that it's creating. I think I'll love the sweater. At least on the sleeves, I just started knitting the arm. I plan to just pick up and knit the ribbing down to the proper length. I didn't do a provisional cast on. I'm kind of curious if that really matters or not. But I don't know. This is the hurdle for me, this piece here. I think I'll love it when I'm done with it, but the question is, can I actually finish it and make it into a wearable garment? That is the TBD on this. So it's at the bottom of the WIPs. So 4th out of 4. Yeah, this was very much abbreviated, the second part, but maybe that's good. The first, I got up to 41 minutes before I crashed, so I probably, with this abbreviated little second part here, I've probably cut out a lot of time, for better for worse. But I'll leave it at that. I don't know if my phone's gonna give out on me again. I hope not, but anyways, wish me luck. You know, I'll hopefully in my next video, I want to just do a regular podcast video where I go over some little finished objects I've done, and hopefully we'll have significant progress on at least one of these WIPs. I also want to resurrect my unfinished hibernating, long resting WIPs. You know, they've been in comas for a long time. And go through those and kind of make some decisions. You know, as much as I'm complaining about this and not knowing what I'm going to do about this, like, I will finish it. Well, I guess maybe I'll say 90%. There's a I can't imagine that I wouldn't unless like something tragic happens along the way. But I am planning to finish all 4 of these WIPs, but I do have quite a few WIPs that aren't going to make it. So I need to take account of all those. I don't even know what I have. You know, I'd like to think we all have those bags, those project bags that have been stuffed into a closet for an undetermined, uncountable amount of time. And I have to reckon with those next, but that's for another time. I'm going to shut this one down now. I hope it's still recording. I don't want to do it a third time. Anyways, come back for the next episode. Like, subscribe so that you know when it's ready. And I will see you next time. Bye.